In my own home, I was overcome by a feeling I couldn't name, something between dread and certainty. So I did something that sounds absolutely insane. I pretended to go on vacation and watched from across the street. What I discovered didn't just break my heart. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments. Now back to my story. My name is Margaret, and I'm 52 years old. For the past 23 years, I've been an architect. Not the kind who designs cookie-cutter subdivisions, but custom homes, sustainable designs, buildings that tell stories. My specialty is creating spaces that honor both the land and the people who live there. The house I'm about to tell you about, it was my masterpiece. David and I designed it together. He was a structural engineer, the man who could make my wildest architectural dreams actually stand up. Every beam, every window, every angle of that house represented us. Our love, our partnership, our vision of what a home should be. Then 3 years ago, David died. Cancer. 61 years old, gone in 8 months. And that's when everything started to fall apart. Let me paint you a picture of my life 6 months ago. I was surviving. That's the word, right? Not living, not thriving, surviving. The kind of grief that sits on your chest every morning, making it hard to remember why you should get out of bed. The house felt enormous without David. Every room echoed with his absence. My daughter Cassidy noticed. Of course she noticed. She'd always been perceptive, even as a child. She's 28 now, married to Blake for 3 years. And when she suggested they move into our guest house, the separate cottage David built at the back of our property, it felt like a lifeline. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone," she'd said, holding my hands across my kitchen table. "Blake and I can save money, and I can keep you company. We'll have dinners together. It'll be like when I was growing up, but better. You need family around you." I cried with gratitude. Actually cried. What kind of fool does that make me? They moved in on a Saturday in January. Blake carried boxes while Cassidy arranged furniture in the guest house. I made lasagna, David's recipe, and we ate together on their first night. Cassidy laughed at Blake's terrible jokes. I felt something like hope flickering in my chest. For the first time since David died, I didn't feel completely alone. But the thing about betrayal is that it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk through your door wearing a villain's mask. It sits at your dinner table. It laughs at your jokes. It hugs you goodnight and tells you it loves you, and you believe it. Because why wouldn't you? These are the people who are supposed to protect you. Your own child, the man she chose to build a life with. You trust them with your keys, your Wi-Fi password, your vulnerability, your entire life. The weird things started small, so small I convinced myself I was imagining them. It was a Tuesday in March when I first noticed. I'd been at the office reviewing plans for a community center project, came home around 2 in the afternoon. The house was quiet. Cassidy and Blake were both at work, or so I thought. I went to my home office to file some documents. That's when my hand froze on the filing cabinet. You know that feeling when something's wrong, but you can't immediately identify what? Like your subconscious is screaming, but your conscious mind is still catching up? The cabinet drawer wasn't quite closed. Just a 1/4-inch gap. I always close my drawers completely. 20 years of architectural precision trains you for details. But okay, maybe I'd been distracted last time. Then I noticed the papers inside. See, I organize my files chronologically within categories. Property documents in front, then insurance, then financial records. Every architect has a system. Mine had been disrupted. The property deed folder sat at an angle. Tax documents were shuffled out of order. My heart started beating faster. I pulled open the drawer completely, and that's when I saw the scratches. Fresh ones. Tiny but visible around the lock mechanism, like someone had tried to pick it with something crude. A paperclip maybe, or a letter opener. I stood there for a full minute, staring at those scratches. Then I did what we all do when confronted with something that might shatter our worldview. I rationalized it. Maybe I'd done it myself somehow. Maybe I'd been disorganized and forgotten. Grief does strange things to memory, right? But even as I thought it, I knew. I'm an architect. I've spent decades training my eye to catch structural problems before they become catastrophic. Spotting what doesn't belong is literally my job. Those scratches were new. That disorder was deliberate. Someone had gone through my private files. Someone had been in my home office, rifling through my most sensitive documents. The question was, who? Dinner that night was chicken marsala. I made it from scratch, trying to focus on the rhythm of cooking instead of the growing knot in my stomach. Cassidy set the table while Blake opened a bottle of wine, a nice Pinot Grigio he said he'd been saving. We sat down, made small talk about our days. Everything felt normal. Then Cassidy cleared her throat. "Mom, I've been meaning to talk to you about something." I looked up from my plate. She was using her serious voice, the one she'd developed working as a social worker. Professional, carefully modulated, the voice she used with clients, not with family. "What's on your mind, honey?" She exchanged a glance with Blake. Just a flicker, but I caught it. Body language, unspoken communication. "We're worried about you," Blake said, leaning forward. "Living in this big house alone. It's a lot to maintain." "I'm managing fine," I said slowly. "Are you, though?" Cassidy's voice was gentle but insistent. "You seem scattered lately, forgetting things. We found the stove on last week when you'd gone to bed." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "What are you talking about? I never leave the stove on." "You did, Mom." Blake smelled gas and had to turn it off. I looked at Blake. He nodded, his expression sympathetic, concerned. I had no memory of this. None. But the certainty in their voices made me doubt myself. Had I? Was I losing track of things? "And this house," Cassidy continued, gesturing around, "all these stairs, the maintenance, the memories that just keep you stuck. Have you thought about maybe downsizing? Something more manageable?" The word hit me like cold water. Manageable. Not a home. Not my life's work. Not the building David and I created together. Every detail chosen with love and intention. Manageable. Like I was a problem to be solved. An obstacle to be reduced in size. "I'm not selling my house," I said quietly. "We're not saying sell," Blake said quickly. Too quickly. "Just consider options for your own well-being." I set down my fork with careful precision. Looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. And for the first time I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Calculation. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the bed I'd shared with David for 28 years, staring at the ceiling. The moon cast shadows through the skylight we'd designed to perfectly frame the stars. Every detail of this house was intentional. Every corner held memory. The stove incident bothered me. I had no recollection of leaving anything on, but they'd both been so certain, so specific. Had grief damaged me more than I realized? Then I thought about those scratches on my filing cabinet, the moved papers, the way Cassidy and Blake had exchanged that glance at dinner, the word manageable. I got out of bed at 2 a.m, went downstairs in the dark, stood in my office doorway, looking at the filing cabinet. At 3 a.m, I made a decision that would change everything. The next morning at breakfast, I made my announcement. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told them, keeping my voice casual. "You're right. I've been stuck. So I'm going to do something David and I always planned. I'm taking that trip to Iceland." Cassidy's face lit up. "Mom, that's wonderful. When?" "I'm thinking 2 weeks. I'll leave Saturday. Come back at the end of the month. David always wanted to see the waterfalls there. I thought I'd scatter some of his ashes at Seljalandsfoss, like he wanted." I watched them carefully. Cassidy's expression was pure relief. Blake actually smiled. "That's really healthy, Margaret," Blake said, "taking time for yourself. You two won't mind holding down the fort while I'm gone." "Of course not," Cassidy said quickly. "Don't worry about a thing here. We'll take care of everything." Everything. That word hung in the air like a promise or a threat. I spent the next 2 days making very public preparations. posted on Facebook about my upcoming trip, called friends to tell them I'd be offline for 2 weeks, bought a plane ticket to Reykjavik that I had every intention of using, just not the way they thought, because I wasn't going to Iceland. And I was going 20 minutes away to watch what happened when they thought I was gone. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline Pacific Northwest sunshine that makes Portland look like a postcard. I loaded my suitcase into my car while Cassidy and Blake stood on the porch waving. "Have an amazing trip, Mom," Cassidy called. "Send pictures," Blake added. I drove away, watching them in my rearview mirror. The moment my car turned the corner, I saw it. They went back inside quickly, purposefully, like they'd been waiting for this. I didn't go to the airport. Instead, I drove to an extended stay hotel in Beaverton, checked in under my maiden name, Margaret Torres, paid cash for 2 weeks. The clerk barely looked at me. Then I made a call. "Grace, it's Margaret Chen. I need to ask you an unusual favor." Grace Park had been my neighbor for 8 years. She lived in the stunning modernist house directly across from mine, a glass and steel masterpiece designed by a Japanese architect in the 70s. Grace was 70 years old, a retired art gallery owner with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. We'd bonded over our love of good design and better wine. "What kind of favor?" Grace's voice was cautious but curious. "I need to rent your house for 2 weeks. Not live there, just use the upstairs front bedroom. To watch my own house." A long pause. "What's going on, Margaret?" So I told her. Everything. The scratched filing cabinet, the dinner conversation, the feeling that something was deeply, terribly wrong. My voice cracked when I got to the part about the stove I supposedly left on. Another pause. Then, "Come over. Bring your surveillance equipment." "I don't have surveillance equipment." "No, but my son's a security consultant. He left equipment here after upgrading my system. Come over. We'll set you up properly." 2 hours later, I was positioned in Grace's guest bedroom with binoculars, a camera with a telephoto lens, and a perfect view of my own living room windows. Grace brought me coffee and sat down beside me. "I should tell you something," she said quietly. "I've noticed things too. Cars coming late at night. A man in an expensive suit. I wrote down license plates." She handed me a small notebook. Dates, times, observations. "Grace, you've been watching my house?" She met my eyes steadily. "My son's ex-wife stole everything from him before I realized what was happening. I won't let it happen to someone else. And that's how I became a detective in my own life. The first 2 days were almost boring. Cassidy and Blake went about normal routines. Work in the morning, home by 6, dinner, TV. I documented everything with timestamps, but nothing seemed unusual. I started to feel ridiculous. What was I doing? Spying on my own daughter like some paranoid conspiracy theorist? Then came Monday night. I was ready to pack it up, apologize to Grace for wasting her time, when headlights swept down the street at 10:47 p.m. A black Mercedes sedan, expensive. It slowed in front of my house, then pulled into my driveway. Grace, who'd been reading in the corner, sat up. That's him. That's the man I've been seeing. A figure emerged from the driver's side, male, maybe 50, wearing a suit despite the late hour. He carried a leather briefcase. My front door opened before he could knock. Blake must have been watching for him. I raised my camera, focused the telephoto lens, started shooting. Through my own living room window, I could see them clearly. The man, Blake. And then Cassidy appeared from the hallway. They weren't surprised to see each other. This was planned. "Who is he?" I whispered. Grace pulled out her notebook. License plate registered to Richard Vaughn. I looked him up. He's a commercial real estate developer, the one who's been trying to buy up West Hills properties for luxury condos. My blood ran cold. Why would a developer be meeting with my daughter? We watched as they settled at my dining room table. My table, where Cassidy had eaten thousands of meals growing up, where David and I had celebrated anniversaries, where we'd made the final design decisions for this very house. The man, Vaughn, spread documents across the surface. I zoomed in with my camera, clicked photos rapidly. Even from this distance, I could make out what they were looking at. Architectural plans. My architectural plans. The original designs for my house. Cassidy pulled out a folder, red, worn at the edges. I recognized it instantly. That was from my filing cabinet. The private locked filing cabinet that someone had scratched trying to open. She'd taken my property documents, the deed, the plans, everything, and she was showing them to a developer. Grace's hand found my shoulder. I realized I was shaking. We watched for another hour as they examined documents, pointed at plans, made notes. Blake signed something. Then Cassidy. Vaughn pulled out his phone, showed them something that made them all smile. At midnight, Vaughn left. Blake and Cassidy stood on my porch watching him go. Then Cassidy said something that made Blake laugh. She was celebrating. My daughter was celebrating something about my home, my documents, my life. And I still had no idea what. But I was going to find out. What I discovered over the next 3 nights destroyed every assumption I'd ever made about family, loyalty, and the people you trust most in this world. But that's a story for next time. The second meeting happened 3 nights later. Thursday at 11:15 p.m. This time I was ready. Grace had helped me set up a digital recorder aimed at my front window, not for video. The distance was too great, but to capture audio if they stepped outside. Same black Mercedes, same Richard Vaughn, but this time, he brought someone with him. A woman, mid-40s, carrying a laptop bag, professional attire. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. "Who's that?" I whispered to Grace. Grace was already typing on her phone, reverse image searching from the photo I'd just taken. "Give me a minute." Through my telephoto lens, I watched them gather again at my dining room table. This time, the woman opened her laptop. Cassidy leaned in close, studying whatever was on the screen. My camera clicked continuously. Each photo time-stamped, geotagged, undeniable. Grace's phone chimed. Got her. Lorraine Wu, real estate attorney specializing in property transfers and estate law. My stomach dropped. Estate law? Margaret. Grace's voice was careful. Why would they need an estate attorney? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the implications were crashing over me like a wave. Estate law, property transfers, a developer, my architectural plans. They weren't just planning to convince me to sell my house. Through the window, I watched Cassidy pull out more documents from that red folder, the one from my filing cabinet. She spread them across the table. I could make out the Maricopa County Recorder's seal on what had to be my property deed. Vaughn examined something, held it up to the light. Checking watermarks, I realized. Verifying authenticity. Then Blake said something that made everyone at the table laugh. Actually laugh. Lorraine Wu raised a glass. Where had that come from? And they all toasted to something. To what? To stealing my home? To whatever scheme they'd concocted? The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When it ended, Vaughn and Lorraine left together. Blake closed the door behind them, then turned to Cassidy. Even from across the street, I could see the relief on his face. But it was what happened next that made my blood run cold. They stood in my foyer, the foyer David designed with custom mahogany panels he'd sourced from a sustainable forest. And Blake pulled out his phone, started taking pictures of the walls, the light fixtures, the custom staircase railing, like he was documenting something, like he was preparing an inventory. I need to get inside, I said. Grace looked at me sharply. Margaret, that's breaking and entering. It's my house. Legally, yes. But if they've established residency in the guest house and you enter without permission while they're there, I won't go when they're there. Tomorrow, Friday. Cassidy works at the Children's Services office until 5. Blake has that construction supervisor job in Hillsborough. He's never home before 6. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then, what are you looking for? Whatever they're hiding, whatever they showed Vaughn and that attorney, I need to know the full scope of what they're planning. And if you find something, then I'll know how to fight back. The next morning, I watched from Grace's window as they left for work. Cassidy, at 8:15, Blake at 8:45. I waited another 30 minutes to be absolutely certain, then grabbed my keys and walked across the street. My heart hammered as I unlocked my own front door. This was insane, sneaking into my own home like a burglar. But that's what they'd reduced me to. A stranger in the house I'd designed, built, poured my soul into. Inside. Everything looked normal, disturbingly normal. The living room David and I had furnished together, the kitchen where we'd cooked thousands of meals, photos of Cassidy growing up on the mantel, gap-toothed at 6, graduating high school, her wedding day. How do you reconcile the child in those photos with whatever was happening now? I pushed the thought away. Focus. I had maybe 4 hours before Cassidy came home. I started with the obvious place, their bedroom in the main house. They'd moved into it after I'd offered them the guest house, claiming the cottage was too small for their needs. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Now it felt strategic. The bedroom was neat, almost too neat. Blake's side was organized with military precision. Cassidy's had her characteristic scatter of jewelry and skincare products. Nothing seemed unusual. Then I checked the closet and found a filing box I'd never seen before, plain brown cardboard, unmarked, hidden behind Blake's winter coats. My hand shook as I pulled it down and opened the lid. The first document I pulled out made my vision blur. Power of attorney, legal authorization for Cassidy Ann Morrison, my daughter's married name, to make financial and medical decisions on behalf of Margaret Ellen Torres Chen. My signature sat at the bottom of the page, except I'd never signed it. I'd never even seen this document. The signature was good. Someone had studied my handwriting carefully. But I'm an architect. I sign dozens of documents every week, and I know my own signature like I know the lines of my own palm. The pressure was wrong. The loop on the M in Margaret was too round. And the date, I stared at the date, April 15th, 2024. That was 3 months ago. 3 months during which I'd supposedly given Cassidy complete control over my finances and medical decisions, and I had absolutely no memory of it because it never happened. This was forgery. My daughter had forged my signature on legal documents. I set it aside with trembling hands and pulled out the next paper. Psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Kenneth Marsh, clinical psychologist. The report detailed multiple sessions with me, sessions I'd never attended, documenting increasing cognitive decline consistent with early-stage dementia and significant memory impairment requiring intervention. Every word was a lie. Every session was fiction. But it was all there in official letterhead with a licensed psychologist's signature. Had they paid him? Forged this too? Either way, it was documentation that I was incompetent. The third document made me sit down on the floor. Preliminary sales agreement. My property, 2047 Ridgewood Terrace, Portland, Oregon, listed for sale to Cascade Heights Development LLC, Richard Vaughn's company, for $2.3 million, contingent on resolution of ownership transfer via power of attorney. Closing date, June 28th, that was 2 weeks from today. But it was the attached document that destroyed me. Demolition permit application, filed with the City of Portland, requesting permission to demolish the existing structure at 2047 Ridgewood Terrace to make way for mixed-use residential development. They weren't just selling my house. They were going to tear it down. Every beam David and I had chosen, every window we'd positioned to catch the light just right, every sustainable feature we'd incorporated to minimize environmental impact, the green roof garden, the solar array, the rainwater collection system. 20 years of architectural innovation, demolished, erased, like it never existed, like David never existed, like our life together was just an inconvenient obstacle to an empty lot worth more than our memories. I sat on the closet floor of my own home, surrounded by documents that detailed the systematic theft of my entire life, and felt something inside me shift, not break, not shatter, harden. They wanted to demolish my house? Fine. I'd demolish their plan first. I photographed every document, every page, every forged signature and fabricated report. My architect's training took over. Systematic, methodical, thorough. Document the evidence. Build the case. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. The box behind the winter coats, the bedroom pristine. No trace I'd ever been there. But I wasn't done. I went to Cassidy's home office, the second bedroom she'd converted into her workspace. Her laptop sat on the desk, closed. I knew her password, had known it for years because she'd never changed it from the one David had helped her create when she was 16. Sunshine, 28. The laptop opened to her email. I shouldn't have read them. There's a line between protecting yourself and invading privacy, and I was about to cross it. But they'd forged my signature, fabricated psychiatric reports, and were planning to demolish my home. That line had already been obliterated. I opened her sent folder and started scrolling. Most of it was mundane. Work emails, messages to friends. Then I found the folder. RV Project, Richard Vaughn Project. There were dozens of emails. I clicked on the first one, dated January 18th, 2 weeks after they'd moved into the guest house. Richard, met with the attorney today. She confirms that if we can establish cognitive decline and get POA approved, the property transfer should be straightforward. Timeline is 6 to 8 months to build proper documentation. Mother is cooperative and trusting, which makes the foundation work easier. Blake will begin phase 1, establishing dependence and documenting concerning behaviors, this week. C. Phase 1. They'd planned this in phases, like a military operation. I clicked another email, March 3rd. Richard. Blake left the stove burner on last night, then told Margaret she'd done it. She believed us immediately. The gaslighting is working better than expected. She's starting to doubt her own memory. Dr. Marsh has agreed to provide the psychiatric evaluation for 15 kilos. He won't actually meet with her. We'll just report sessions and he'll fabricate the documentation. Moving to phase 2 next week. C. The stove. The thing I supposedly left on. Blake had done it deliberately, then blamed me, to make me think I was losing my mind. The gaslighting is working better than expected. My daughter. My child. The little girl I'd rocked to sleep, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, who'd called me crying after her first heartbreak. She'd written those words about systematically destroying my sense of reality. I kept reading. I couldn't stop. Each email was worse than the last. April 22nd. Richard. POA document signed, forged successfully, practiced her signature for 2 weeks. Dr. Marsh's report complete. Attorney Wu says we're on track for June closing. Mother is becoming more withdrawn, which helps our case. Blake and I are documenting every instance of confusion. Question: after closing, what's the timeline for demolition? Blake wants to know when we'll receive the funds. We're planning to relocate before she realizes what's happened. C. Relocate. They were planning to take the money and disappear. I scrolled faster, looking for Richard's response. Cassidy. Demolition permit will be filed as soon as escrow closes. I have a crew on standby. We can have the structure down in 3 days. You'll receive your portion, $1 and 15 meters after fees and my cut, within 48 hours of close. Important. Do not tell her about the sale until it's finalized. Once you have the money, you can relocate anywhere. I'd recommend out of state. Oregon has strong elder abuse laws, and if she catches on before closing, this becomes complicated. Stay the course. 3 more weeks. RV elder abuse laws. He knew this was illegal. They all knew, and they were doing it anyway. My portion. Cassidy was getting $1.15 million to destroy her father's legacy and abandon her mother. But there was one more email. May 10th. Recent. Just 10 days ago. Blake, I need you to understand something. After closing, I'm done. With the house, with Portland, with pretending everything is fine. I have the Costa Rica property lined up. I'll send you your half once I'm settled. Don't contact me at the new email. What we did was necessary. But I can't carry the guilt and the marriage. Consider this your notice. C. I read it 3 times before the meaning penetrated. This email wasn't to Richard. It was to Blake. Cassidy wasn't planning to relocate with Blake. She was planning to leave him. take all the money from selling my house and disappear to Costa Rica, while Blake presumably stayed behind to deal with the fallout. My daughter was betraying everyone, her mother, her husband. She'd created this elaborate plan, enlisted Blake to help her gaslight and defraud me, and was planning to abandon him the moment the money cleared. I sat there in her office chair, staring at her computer screen, and felt a strange kind of calm settle over me. This wasn't just about protecting my house anymore. Blake was a victim too, a co-conspirator. Absolutely. He'd knowingly participated in fraud and emotional abuse. But Cassidy had manipulated him, promised him a future she had no intention of delivering. She'd learned to weaponize trust from the best, from the family that had trusted her completely. I screenshot every email, sent them to my personal cloud storage. Then I closed the laptop exactly as I'd found it. I was back at Grace's house by 3:00 p.m., hours before Cassidy would return from work. Grace took one look at my face and put the kettle on for tea. "What did you find?" I showed her everything. The forged power of attorney, the fabricated psychiatric report, the demolition permits, the emails detailing their plan, including Cassidy's intention to betray Blake. Grace's face went pale. "Margaret, this is criminal fraud, elder abuse, forgery. You need to call the police right now." "Not yet." "What do you mean, not yet? They're planning to demolish your house in 2 weeks, which is why I need to be strategic." I pulled out my phone and started making a list. If I go to the police now, it becomes he said, she said. They'll claim I did sign the documents but forgot. Use the gaslighting they've already done against me. Say I'm confused, maybe even having a mental health crisis. "But you have the emails," which I obtained by accessing Cassidy's computer without permission. A defense attorney could potentially get them excluded. "No, I need more than evidence of their plan. I need to make it impossible for them to execute it." Grace studied me. "You're thinking like an architect." "What do you mean?" "You're not just defending. You're building something. A structure they can't penetrate." She was right. This was what I did. Created systems that could withstand pressure, storms, time. I needed to build a legal fortress they couldn't break through. I opened my laptop and started researching Oregon property law, trust structures, conservation easements. 3 hours later, I had my strategy. First, file a notarized affidavit declaring I'd never signed any power of attorney, establishing clear legal record of fraud. Second, transfer the property into an irrevocable conservation trust with historical preservation restrictions, preventing demolition. Third, get the house designated as architecturally significant by the City Planning Commission, creating legal protection against development. Fourth, place formal holds at every financial institution, requiring my physical presence for any transactions. Fifth, document everything they did wrong, then wait for them to make their move at the closing. Let them think they'd won. Let them show up to sign papers and collect their blood money, then spring the trap in front of witnesses, the title company, the buyer, their attorney, everyone who'd enabled this fraud, public exposure, legal consequences, maximum impact. "That's brilliant," Grace said when I finished explaining. "But Margaret, are you sure? Once you do this, there's no going back. Cassidy will face criminal charges." "She made her choice," I said quietly. "I'm just making mine." The next morning, Saturday, I got to work. First stop, Margaret Simmons, a notary public I'd worked with for 15 years on architectural contracts. She knew my signature better than anyone. I showed up at her home office with a handwritten affidavit. "Margaret Chen," she said, surprised. "I thought you were in Iceland." "Change of plans. I need this notarized immediately." She read the document. "I, Margaret Ellen Torres Chen, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare that I have never executed a power of attorney, authorizing any person to conduct financial or medical decisions on my behalf. Any such documents bearing my signature are fraudulent and were created without my knowledge or consent. Furthermore, I maintain complete mental competency and am fully capable of managing my own affairs." Margaret Simmons looked up, her expression grave. "This is serious. You're alleging forgery. I'm documenting truth. She studied my face. 30 years of notarizing documents had taught her to read people. All right. Sign here. The notary seal came down with a decisive thunk. Official, legal, time-stamped. One piece of the fortress in place. Next stop, Catherine Ortiz, an estate attorney specializing in asset protection. Her office was closed for the weekend, but I'd called ahead. She owed me a favor. I designed her home studio 3 years ago and charged half my usual rate. Margaret, what's this about? She asked, letting me into her home office. I explained the situation in clinical terms. No emotion, just facts. Daughter moved in, discovered forged documents. Need to protect assets immediately. She listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. What you're describing is elder financial abuse. You know that. I do. Most people in your situation want to avoid family scandal. They try to handle it privately. I'm not most people. I'm an architect who spent 20 years building something that matters. I won't let it be erased. She nodded slowly. Irrevocable conservation trust. We can have it drafted and filed by Monday. The property gets transferred to the trust with you as sole trustee. Any demolition would require approval from the trust board, which is only you, and will include historical preservation covenants. What about the timeline? They're trying to close in 2 weeks. Doesn't matter. Once the property is in trust, they can't sell what they don't own. Their forged power of attorney becomes worthless because it authorizes them to act on behalf of Margaret Chen, individual, not on behalf of the Chen Family Conservation Trust. How fast can you move? Give me 48 hours. By Monday morning, your house will be legally untouchable. I felt something loosen in my chest. Do it. As I left Catherine's office, my phone buzzed. A text from Cassidy. Hey, Mom. Hope Iceland is amazing. Miss you. I stared at that heart emoji for a long moment. Then I deleted the message without responding. Monday morning. Catherine called at 9:47 a.m. It's done. The Chen Family Conservation Trust is officially filed with Multnomah County. Your property is now held in perpetual trust with architectural preservation covenants. I've also filed for expedited historic designation with the City Planning Commission. Your house qualifies based on its sustainable design innovations. How strong is this legally? Ironclad. Even if someone had legitimate power of attorney, which they don't, they couldn't override a conservation trust. It would take a court order and proof that the trust was formed under duress or fraud, which it wasn't. You formed it voluntarily while demonstrably of sound mind. And the closing? Any title company that does proper due diligence will discover the trust during their title search. The property can't be sold without trust authorization. Their closing will fail at the title stage. I felt the final piece of the fortress lock into place. Tuesday, I visited 3 banks, added formal holds to every account, notified them in writing that any power of attorney claiming to represent me was fraudulent, provided copies of my notarized affidavit. Wednesday, I met with Samuel Reeves, a planning commissioner I'd worked with on sustainable building initiatives. I showed him the architectural plans for my house, explained its innovations, requested historic designation. This is remarkable work, he said, studying the sustainable systems David and I had designed. Geothermal heating, gray water recycling, passive solar optimization. This was cutting edge in 2003. We should protect this. There's a demolition permit application pending. His expression hardened. Not anymore. I'll fast-track the historic designation. Give me 72 hours. By Thursday, every piece was in position. The legal fortress was complete. Impenetrable, devastating to anyone who tried to breach it. Now I just needed to let them walk into it. I packed up from the hotel Thursday evening, drove home Thursday night at 11:30 p.m., parking quietly in the driveway. Cassidy and Blake were asleep in the main house. They had no idea I'd been watching them for 11 days. No idea their entire plan had been dismantled while they thought I was scattering David's ashes in Iceland. I let myself into my own home silently. Went to my bedroom, lay down in the dark. Tomorrow, I'd play the confused, forgetful mother they needed me to be. I'd let them think their gaslighting had worked, let them believe closing day would arrive smoothly, and then, in front of everyone who'd enabled this fraud, I'd show them exactly who they'd underestimated. A grieving widow? No, an architect who built things to last. Friday morning, I came downstairs at 8:00 a.m. Cassidy was making coffee. When she saw me, her face went through a fascinating sequence. Shock, panic, then forced delight. "Mom, you're back. I thought you had another week in Iceland." I let confusion cross my face. Touched my forehead like I was trying to remember. Did I? I might have gotten the dates mixed up. The altitude was bothering me. Headaches. I couldn't remember if I'd booked 2 weeks or 1, so I just came home. Relief flooded her expression. The forgetful narrative confirmed. "Oh, Mom, that's okay. Maybe the trip was too much. Here, sit down. I'll make you breakfast." Blake came downstairs, saw me, and I watched the same panic then relief sequence play across his face. Over scrambled eggs neither of them knew I couldn't taste. I played my part perfectly. Did I remember to pay the water bill before I left? I can't recall. "Don't worry about it, Mom. We handled everything." "And did someone call about the roof inspection? There was something." "All taken care of. You just rest." They exchanged glances, everything going according to their plan. That evening, Blake brought up the closing, carefully casual. "So, Mom, remember those papers we talked about? The ones to help us manage the house finances?" I furrowed my brow. "Papers? What papers?" "The power of attorney. You signed it a few months ago." "Did I?" I looked genuinely confused. That doesn't sound familiar." "Perfect. Let them think the gaslighting was complete. Let them believe I was so cognitively impaired I didn't remember signing documents I'd never actually signed." "It's okay," Cassidy said quickly, her voice dripping false sympathy. "Don't stress about it. We're handling everything. Actually, there's a meeting next Friday. Just some paperwork to finalize. You don't even need to come. We can take care of it." "A meeting about what?" "Just property stuff. Boring legal things. Don't worry about it." I nodded slowly, like I was struggling to follow. "If you think it's best." "We do, Mom. We really do." After they went to bed, I sat alone in David's reading chair and waited. 6 more days, 6 more days, until they walked into that closing office expecting to collect $1.15 million and discovered they'd already lost everything. I woke up at 5 a.m. on Friday morning. Couldn't sleep anyway. Too much adrenaline coursing through my veins. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I'd lost weight over the past 3 weeks. My hair had more gray than I remembered, but my eyes were clear, focused, the eyes of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I dressed deliberately. Navy blazer David had bought me for my 50th birthday. Cream blouse, professional slacks. The outfit I wore to important client meetings, to planning commission hearings, to moments that mattered. I wasn't dressing as the confused widow they'd been manipulating. I was dressing as the architect I'd always been. Downstairs, Cassidy and Blake were already up, dressed professionally themselves. They were nervous. I could see it in how Blake kept checking his phone, how Cassidy touched her necklace repeatedly, a tell she'd had since childhood. "Morning, Mom," Cassidy said, pouring coffee with hands that trembled slightly. "Remember, Blake and I have that meeting today? The property paperwork we mentioned?" I let confusion cross my face. "Meeting? What meeting?" Relief flickered in her eyes. "Just boring legal stuff. You don't need to come. We'll handle everything." "Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden, Mom. We've got this. You just relax today." "Maybe watch some TV." I nodded slowly, playing the part one final time. "Okay, if you think that's best." They left at 1:15 p.m. The closing was scheduled for 2:00 p.m. at Desert Vista Escrow on Burnside Street. I waited exactly 3 minutes after they drove away. Then I grabbed my briefcase, the leather one David gave me when I started my firm, and headed to my truck. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't going alone. Catherine Ortiz, my estate attorney, met me in the parking lot at 1:50 p.m. "You ready for this?" she asked. "I've been ready for 3 weeks." We walked into the building together. The escrow office was on the 2nd floor, all glass walls and contemporary furniture. Through the conference room window, I could see them already gathered. Richard Vaughn at the head of the table, organizing documents. Cassidy and Blake on the left side, dressed like they were attending a funeral, which, in a way, they were. The funeral of their scheme. Lorraine Wu, the real estate attorney, was arranging paperwork, and there was the buyer, an older man in an expensive suit I didn't recognize, everyone in position for what they thought would be a routine closing. I checked my watch. 1:59 p.m. "One more minute," I said to Catherine. She squeezed my shoulder. "Remember, stay calm, stick to facts, let the documents speak." At exactly 2 p.m., I opened the conference room door. The conversation stopped immediately. All heads turned. I watched Cassidy's face drain of color, watched Blake half rise from his chair before catching himself, watched confusion spread across Vaughn's face, then concern, then something that looked like panic. "Margaret?" Cassidy's voice came out strangled. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer her. Instead, I walked to the empty end of the table, Catherine right behind me, set my briefcase down with a decisive click that echoed in the suddenly silent room. "Good afternoon," I said, my voice carrying the authority of 30 years of professional presentations. "I'm Margaret Chen, the actual owner of the property you're attempting to purchase today." The escrow officer, a woman named Diana Flores, looked between me and Cassidy, confused. "I don't understand. Mrs. Morrison has power of attorney." "No," I interrupted calmly. "She doesn't." And that's when I opened my briefcase. Catherine handed me the first folder, red tab. "This is a notarized affidavit, filed with Multnomah County 10 days ago, declaring that I have never executed a power of attorney authorizing anyone to conduct transactions on my behalf." I placed it directly in front of Diana Flores. She opened it, began reading. Her expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Furthermore," I continued, pulling out the second folder, blue tab, "my property was transferred into an irrevocable conservation trust on June 17th, 11 days ago. Catherine Ortiz is the attorney of record. Here's the county filing with official stamps." Catherine took that folder, handed it to Diana. "As sole trustee of the Chen Family Conservation Trust, Miss Chen is the only person authorized to conduct any transactions involving this property. The power of attorney Mrs. Morrison is presenting, even if it were legitimate, which it's not, would be legally irrelevant. You cannot sell property held in trust without trust authorization." Diana examined the documents carefully. "Mr. Vaughn, did your team conduct a title search?" Vaughn's face had gone red. "Yes, of course we did." The title was clear. "When was the search conducted?" I asked. 2 weeks ago. Before the trust was established, I pulled out my phone, showed the screen to Diana. "Here's the timestamp, June 17th, 11:47 a.m. The trust filing. Your title search is outdated." The buyer, who I learned was named Gerald Patterson, stood abruptly. "Vaughn, you assured me this transaction was clean, that all documentation was verified." "It was verified," Vaughn insisted, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Really?" I pulled out the third folder. Black tab. "Let's talk about verification. This is the power of attorney document you've been relying on. Note the signature at the bottom, supposedly mine. Now look at this comparative signature analysis." I laid out multiple documents with my genuine signature beside the forged one. Even to an untrained eye, the differences were visible. The pressure is wrong, the letter formation is inconsistent, and most tellingly, I pointed to a specific section. This document is dated April 15th, but that's my signature from before 2010. I changed how I sign my name after developing arthritis in my right hand. Diana closed the folder with finality. "I can't proceed with this closing. If there's a question about the power of attorney's legitimacy, we're required to verify." "There's no question," I interrupted. "It's a forgery, and I can prove it." Cassidy found her voice finally. "Mom, you're confused. You signed those papers but forgot. We talked about this. Your memory. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen twice. My voice filled the room from the recording. Blake left the stove burner on last night, then told Margaret she'd done it. She believed us immediately. The gaslighting is working better than expected. That was Cassidy's voice. From the email she'd sent to Richard Vaughn in March, the silence in the room was absolute. That's from an email my daughter sent, detailing how she and Blake were deliberately making me question my own memory, creating false incidents to make me seem incompetent. I swiped to the next recording. Cassidy again. Dr. Marsh has agreed to provide the psychiatric evaluation for 15 Kewoy. He won't actually meet with her. We'll just report sessions and he'll fabricate the documentation. Lorraine Wu, the attorney, went pale. You fabricated a psychiatric evaluation? I have every email, I said calmly. Every detail of the scheme, the forged signatures, the paid-off psychiatrist, the plan to demolish my home for condo development, the timeline for taking the money and disappearing. Gerald Patterson was already gathering his documents. Vaughn, I'm calling my attorney. You represented this as a legitimate transaction. It is legitimate, Vaughn insisted. They assured me they lied to you, I said. The same way they lied to me. The same way they lied to everyone. But here's the thing. I could have stopped there. Could have walked away knowing I'd protected my home and exposed their fraud. Instead, I pulled out one more document, because there was something else. Something I'd discovered in those final 6 days that changed everything about how I understood what Cassidy had become. And this was going to hurt. But she needed to hear it. Blake, I said quietly, did Cassidy tell you about the Costa Rica property? He frowned, confused. What Costa Rica property? The one she purchased 3 weeks ago. Beachfront condo, paid in cash, $180,000, under her maiden name. Blake's face went slack. What are you talking about? I pulled out the printed property record, slid it across the table to him. She bought it May 15th. Registration shows one owner, Cassidy Ann Torres. Not Morrison, Torres. He stared at the document like it was written in a foreign language. Blake, I'm sorry to tell you this, but my daughter wasn't planning to share this house sale with you. She was planning to take her cut and disappear. That's not true, Cassidy said, but her voice had gone hollow. I have the email you sent him. I pulled out my phone again. May 10th, quote, after closing, I'm done. With the house, with Portland, with pretending everything is fine. I'll send you your half once I'm settled. Don't contact me at the new email. Blake turned to look at Cassidy. Really look at her. You were leaving me? Blake, I can explain. You were going to take the money and abandon me after I helped you with all of this? His voice was rising. I forged documents for you. I gaslit your mother for you. I destroyed my own integrity because you said we were building a future together. You bought a property in Costa Rica under your maiden name. He stood up, the chair scraping loudly. This whole time I was just, what, a useful tool? The room had gone completely silent. Everyone watching this marriage implode in real time. Cassidy looked at me then, really looked at me. And in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in months. Shame. Mom, she whispered, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. The money, the pressure. Blake kept pushing and Don't, I said quietly. Don't blame Blake now. You wrote the emails. You made the plans. You chose this. Diana Flores stood. I'm terminating this closing. And I'm required to report suspected fraud to the authorities. Gerald Patterson was already on his phone with his attorney. Vaughn was gathering his things, trying to exit before the situation got worse. Lorraine Wu looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Margaret, Catherine said quietly, what do you want to do? It was the question I'd been asking myself for 3 weeks. What did I want? I looked at Cassidy, at Blake, at these two people who'd systematically planned to steal everything David and I built, who'd made me doubt my own mind, who'd been days away from demolishing 20 years of architectural innovation for profit. I want them prosecuted, I said. Fully. I want charges filed for fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and conspiracy. I want restraining orders. I want them out of my property. And I want every person who enabled this, Dr. Marsh, anyone who falsified documents, I want them held accountable. Mom, please, Cassidy started. You stopped being my daughter when you decided I was worth more demolished than alive, I said. My voice didn't shake, didn't waver. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I closed my briefcase, looked at Diana. You'll forward all documentation to the district attorney's office. Yes, ma'am, immediately. Good, Catherine. We're done here. We walked out of that conference room together. Behind us, I could hear Cassidy crying, Blake's angry voice, Vaughn trying to negotiate, Lorraine Wu making frantic phone calls. I didn't look back. In the parking lot, Catherine turned to me. You okay? No, I said honestly. But I will be. What now? Now. I looked up at the June sky, clear and blue and perfect. Now I go home, to my house, the one that's still standing. I'm standing in my kitchen on a September morning, coffee in hand, looking out at the view David and I designed this window to capture. The legal proceedings moved faster than I expected. Cassidy and Blake were both charged with multiple felonies. They took plea deals, 18 months probation, community service, restitution they'll probably never be able to pay, and permanent criminal records. Dr. Marsh lost his license. Lorraine Wu is under investigation by the state bar. Richard Vaughn's company is facing multiple lawsuits from other families who discovered similar schemes. The house received historic designation. It's now protected by the city as an example of early sustainable architecture. They use photos of it in urban planning courses. But here's what nobody tells you about winning. It doesn't undo the loss. Cassidy sent letters, dozens of them, apologizing, explaining, begging for another chance. I read the first one, filed the rest away unopened. Blake sent one too, not apologizing, but explaining how Cassidy had manipulated him, how she'd promised they'd use the money to start over, how he'd believed they were helping me by forcing a sale before I deteriorated further. I felt sorry for him. Almost. But sympathy doesn't erase complicity. Grace asks me sometimes if I regret it, pressing charges, destroying whatever relationship remained. I don't. Because here's what I learned. Some betrayals are so fundamental that forgiveness becomes self-destruction. Cassidy didn't just try to steal my house. She tried to steal my reality, my competence, my right to trust my own mind. And she did it not out of desperation, but out of greed. That's not something you come back from. Last week, I hosted my first event since David died, a workshop for architects on sustainable design. 23 people toured my home, studied the systems David engineered, asked questions about green building practices. Afterward, one young architect, maybe 25, asked me, "What's the most important thing you've learned in your career?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Build things that last, I said, and protect them from people who want to tear them down, even if those people are family. Especially if those people are family. Here's what I want you to understand. If something feels wrong, trust that feeling. If people are making you doubt your own memory, your own perceptions, your own reality, that's not love. That's not help. That's manipulation. And you have every right to protect yourself from it, even when it comes from family. Especially when it comes from family. My house still stands. Every beam, every window, every sustainable system David and I designed together. It's protected now, preserved. It'll outlast all of us. That's my victory, not revenge, not destroyed relationships. Just the simple fact that what we built survived the people who wanted to tear it down. I'm Margaret Chen. I'm 52 years old. I'm an architect, and I'm a survivor. Grace brought over wine last night. We sat on my deck, watching the sunset over Portland, and she raised her glass. To houses that stand, she said. To foundations that hold, I replied. We drank to that. To structures built strong enough to weather any storm, even the ones that come from inside. Now I need to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family and self-protection? Have you experienced gaslighting from people you trusted? Or maybe you've seen warning signs of elder abuse in someone you know? Drop your story in the comments. You don't have to use real names. You don't have to share more than you're comfortable with. But I want you to know you're not alone. What happened to me happens to thousands of people every year. And the more we talk about it, the more we protect each other. Hit that subscribe button if this story resonated with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere out there, someone is questioning their own reality, doubting their own perceptions, wondering if they're crazy. They're not crazy. They're being manipulated. And maybe this story will help them see clearly enough to protect themselves before it's too late. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here.